This free podcast I like? There's gonna be more episodes? I want there to be less! It takes too long! What? What? What's good? Thank you so much for tuning in to another episode of the Newest Olympian. My name is Mike Schubert. I'm the titular Newest Olympian. I am a 30-year-old man who has never read the Percy Jackson books before, but now I am reading them. I'm undoing my crimes on a quest to determine if this is a book series that we've all been sleeping on. I'm not on this quest alone, though. I am joined not only by one other person, two other people, and not only by two other people, but two people who host a Percy Jackson podcast. It's Erica and Carter from the Seaweed Brain podcast. Erica and Carter, how's it going?
Woohoo!
It's good.
That was the hypest intro we've ever gotten on someone else's podcast. Oh boy, I felt like I was running into a coliseum just now, even though I'm sitting on my sofa.
Well, I'm very excited that you're hyped. I'm very excited to make this happen. It's a crossover that has been in the works for a little bit. We're finally making it happen. Most importantly, as we were talking before recording, the listeners have been clamoring that I get some Gen Z younger people on the podcast because everyone's like, what are you doing, you old man, with all your old friends? We need people who actually grew up with the books, not people who were, I don't know, people want younger folks on, and I'm sorry, but I didn't know many that were podcasters that have read the PJO books until you have come along and now met that need. So Why don't each of you explain your younger histories with the Percy Jackson book series?
The good thing also, Mike Schubes, if I might call you that,
you may.
Mr. Schubes. We're not that. I mean, I'm 22. The good thing is we actually have a lot of friends who are younger than us even who have their own Percy Jackson podcast. So I think that this is going to open your floodgates for people who are even more energetic and burnt out than we are, who know about TikTok and things like that to be able to barge down your doors. But yeah, we have a podcast. It's called Seaweed Brain, and it's been going on since June of 2020, so
almost 2 years now. Ooh.
Ah, the classic pandemic hobby podcast. Look, and you've kept it going, unlike 85% of those.
I know, like, where's my prize? My prize is community and love for the series. Carter and I grew up together. We're from Hawaii, and
cool.
We both read these books individually when we were in elementary school, and we met in 6th grade and have been besties ever since. We were reading them when we were growing up, right? So, like, we were in high school when Heroes of Olympus was dropping, just about aging out as Trials of Apollo happened, so we've actually never read Trials of Apollo. We're working on that now. Cool. But yeah, we just loved spoiling the books for each other, depending on who read them faster. When they would drop, Carter would run into the library and be like, Erica, this, and this happened, which we won't spoil anything on this podcast, but...
Thank you. I was going to say, that's very important that not happen here. Otherwise, it's ruined.
Unfortunately, a habit of ours.
I don't know how much of your listenership has read the books before, but there's a very specific spoiler that happens in The House of Hades, book 4 of
Heroes of Olympus
series. Yes. There's a revelation about a certain character that I think most people will know what I'm referring to if you have read it before. I just bursted into the library. We would have been sophomores or something in high school. And I immediately just revealed this to Erica, who was pretty devastated for a number of reasons. Not just the fact that I spoiled it, but also because this changed certain headcanon dynamics that were going on ahead of that. It was a pretty major event. And it is partially to make up for that original sin, if you will, that we did the podcast or continuing to do the podcast.
Right.
Healing. Yes.
Yeah, it's a way for us to stay in touch and also be nerdy. And we've made so many friends from doing it. And the original reason was because when we reread them together in the pandemic, when we were searching for that comfort media, like many of us did, including, I'm sure, many people who are listening to this now, we were both just struck by the beautiful relationship between Percy and Annabeth. No spoilers for what happens,
Sure. Look, it could go one of two directions, and I'm happy with either of them.
Right. The way that their relationship develops is so stunning and slow burn that we both felt like we needed to talk about it on the internet for hours and hours. And so that's why we're here.
That's so good. I love it. I am very happy that you're here. And to answer your question, Carter, I feel like at this point, most listeners of the podcast have finished at least the main series. I think when I started the show, it was probably closer to a 50-50 split of people who were fans already and people who were new. Mm-hmm. But now, because it did take me 6 months to get through the first book, just by nature of weekly podcasts only covering 2 chapters max at a time, a lot of people, understandably so, grew impatient and initially said, oh yeah, I'll read along with the show. And then 2 weeks later, I've already finished The Heroes of Olympus. So I feel like now everyone is pretty far ahead of where I am. But hey, power to the people who are going along with the show. Shout out to when we'll be done reading the main series in 2.5 years if we keep up this rate.
That's great. Like season 2 of the TV show will be dropping. It'll be awesome.
At the very least, I'm at least in a spot where I could watch the Disney Plus show whenever it comes out, and I'm not worried about that. And to all the people who are upset with how long it takes to get through the books and stuff, I don't understand why you're complaining about more of your free podcast. This free podcast I like? There's going to be more episodes? I want there to be less. It takes too long. What? What?
Oh, the listeners.
And think of the future when it's 2035 and Jeff Bezos is supreme lord of America and there's no hope in your life. I mean, I'm right. But when you have nothing else in your life but to re-listen to old episodes of the Newest Olympian, you will be happy that it took me so many episodes to get through each book because now you have more comfort. So you're welcome.
To be honest, we smashed through the first season of our podcast. We did 1 season as the entire first series. We were heading into our senior year of college. We didn't know if we were going to keep it going. So we did 3 episodes per book until we hit the Battle of the Labyrinth when there's just too much going on to make that happen.
Okay. We still tried. We would just get into the recordings and notice that, more than an hour had gone by and we'd gone through 4 chapters and just been like, well, okay, I guess that's a good stopping point. We'll see the same crew next week. And then it stretched into 6 episodes for that book when it was supposed to be 3.
But the good news is, for anyone who's like, there's too many Lightning Thief episodes, it doesn't get better than this. Like, I feel like anyone, I'm sure people have said that to you, that the original series is the best. It's the cleanest. It's the tightest, the fiercest of all of the Riordanverse series. In my personal opinion.
Okay,
I am slowly
like
becoming a Magnus Chase stan, but...
A name that I know exists but know literally nothing about. So that's very fun for me.
And I'll say nothing about it.
Good. No, it's funny because on the last episode, which I just recorded actually earlier today, I was talking and my guest was saying that the Heroes of Olympus is actually the superior in terms of writing prowess. Not necessarily, the characters I love or how close it is to my heart, but in terms of Rick getting better at writing / storytelling. He was saying that he likes that series better. I've heard some people make that claim as well. I don't know what the exact percentage breakdown is. Maybe I should do a Twitter poll of sorts to figure out where people lie in terms of thinking one versus the other. Or we could just all think they're great and not have to fight between our kids.
Imagine not ranking things. Imagine just enjoying things and not comparing them. Couldn't be me.
This is funny because I'm also a big nerd in basketball, and that always happens with basketball. It's like people always want to compare, is LeBron better than Michael Jordan?
Right.
And all this stuff. And in basketball, you just can't do it because basketball in 1947 was so different than basketball in 2022. It's just completely worldly different sports. I think it's so silly. Why can't we just like all the players? But it's funny that doesn't escape nerddom where people are arguing who's the best book series, which book within the series is the best, et cetera, et cetera.
And this demigod is the weakest. Blah, 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 blah. Shut up.
We'll figure it all out. But let's discuss Chapter 6 of The Sea of Monsters, which is called Demon Pigeons Attack, which, what a chapter title. So fantastic. And especially for me as a big New York boy, I love a pigeon. I love me a sky rat. I think they're great. I think pigeons are fantastic. They're pretty high in my bird ranking. Bottom of my bird ranking, seagulls. Last place bird. Absolute. Ooh, I've angered the Hawaiians in the chat.
It's okay. We're not Hawaiian. We're just from Hawaii. And there are no seagulls in Hawaii. So no worries there. Other seabirds, though.
I've angered 2 people who apparently love seagulls. I hate seagulls so much. Maybe it's my New Jersey Shore bias, but seagulls, at least in the Jersey Shore, huge jerks. Absolutely the worst. They would always try to swoop down and take your food, and tourists would come through, and they would try to feed the birds, and then there's so many seagulls around, it's awful. And then one time, I was going surfing in California, and I went to Trader Joe's, and I got a bunch of snacks and stuff, so that after I was a big surfing boy, I could take a little break, and I got a little sandwich. I got some grocery store sushi because that is my guilty pleasure vice. I freaking love grocery store sushi.
Fair enough.
But I understand it's different. It's like getting Taco Bell and pretending that that's Mexican food. Grocery store sushi is its own brand of food, but I love it.
Amen.
Yeah.
And then I got, I think, an orange or something, and I put it in a brown paper bag. There was like nobody on the beach because it was a weekday and I was there for a work trip and we didn't have to do anything that day. And I came back from surfing to 4 seagulls eating all my food out of the bag, ripped open all of the stuff. I was distraught. I hate seagulls. Why do you two like them?
I totally see that is like a foundational trauma for you. I see the fear in your eyes. I feel your
Thank you
heart
for
rate
hearing me.
quicken as you discuss that. I do think Carter and I maybe have a romanticized, idealized version of seagulls from fantasizing about East Coast birds growing up in Hawaii.
Ah, okay.
Yeah. But now we're both located on the East Coast, Boston and New York. So maybe we know a little bit more about seagulls now.
I think with the knowledge, I have a greater respect for them.
Wow.
Because of the fact that they did not surrender their beaches. I mean, I just like the pigeon. For the same reason that one might respect a pigeon, I feel like you would also respect a seagull for refusing to, succumb to the ever sprawling encroachment of humanity upon that which it should not have dominion over, and that which deserves to be free and wild, like the beach where you were surfing.
Okay. I think the difference between seagulls and pigeons is that seagulls actively try to steal your things. Pigeons scavenge for what has been left behind by the city of New York. If there is a discarded bagel on the side of the road, pigeons getting at it. And I also just appreciate that pigeons are afraid of nothing. They don't care if you yell at them, clap at them, cars coming, taxis coming, subways coming. They're just chilling. I don't know that I've ever seen a pigeon fly away from something. I've just seen them like kind of walk slowly away. And I feel like pigeons are just kind of doing their own thing. And I appreciate it. And I respect it. I feel like they are the most New York bird possible. Like, I'm going to do me, leave me alone. I am a pigeon.
Yeah.
Anyway, this is a podcast about a book. So
It's a bird watching podcast, actually.
Actually, yes. So what I'm trying to do for the Sea of Monsters and going forward is I'm trying to guess based on what the chapter title is. Take a note immediately before we read a single word and guess what I think the chapter title refers to. So when I was reading this, my guess was that they just somehow got back into New York City and these are just regular pigeons. Spoiler alert, super wrong.
How could you possibly have known what a Stymphalian bird was? That was not your fault.
I have even read about them now in this chapter, and I still don't know what they are. I have no idea. I will learn in a future Dr. Moy episode. All I know, Hercules fought them for some reason. But chapter 6 begins, and it begins with Tyson giggling with excitement that Percy is his brother. And every time I think I couldn't love Tyson more, this guy goes out there and somehow becomes even cuter, and I want nothing but the best for Tyson. I want to wrap him in bubble wrap and make sure no one hurts him. I love him so much.
He's an angel.
Absolutely. He doesn't process when Percy tries to repeatedly explain to him that it's not that simple, that we're half brothers, Poseidon, all this stuff. But Tyson's just on cloud 9. Percy, not so much. Narrator Percy at one point says, quote, and me, ... as much as I like the big guy, I couldn't help feeling embarrassed, ashamed. There I said it. And I respect the honesty, and I understand that Percy's a 13-year-old boy, so it makes sense. But it does make me a little sad that Percy isn't being the best of sports towards Tyson. I'm hoping that this changes over the course of this book, but I don't know.
No, absolutely. As much as it is something that I respect a great deal that this narrative is included, it hurts to read a little bit, especially given the way that we've seen Percy have this turnaround, the way that his understanding of his relationship with Tyson shifts so quickly once he understands that Tyson, I don't know, has like more of a concrete reputational cost. There's something sad about the way that he can defend Tyson when he's out in the world, the way that he feels responsible for Tyson and wants to go, skateboard shopping with him, but feels this defensiveness about this other part of his identity that he's kept hidden. It's hard, but I think it's important for the children.
Yeah, I just greatly value how Rick never lets Percy off the hook when it comes to being a complicated person and just being a boy, figuring out how to do life. All the way through all of his books, I feel like Percy is never idealized, has to face his moral miscomings and all of that. And like, we finish The Lightning Thief, he's a great big hero, and we dive right back into Sea of Monsters, and we're already like, Percy, what about this internal bias? Same with Annabeth. Let's think about it.
Yeah, I mean, he's not perfect-sy. He's just Percy. And
he's just per-sassy. He's not perfect-sy.
Right. But I appreciate Rick writing it in. I think it does teach a good lesson. I'm hoping that the relationship between Tyson and Percy improves. But I do think that in this case, I think what has changed things a little bit here is that Percy's mad at Poseidon and he's kind of taking it out on Tyson. And I do think we had a little bit of the, kind of like you mentioned, Carter, it's a little bit of the, I will be nice and a good sport about Tyson until it's inconvenient for me. And what happens here in this chapter is, oh no, people are making fun of me and it's people I like. When it's the other school, he doesn't care when the bullies make fun of him because he's not concerned with what those bullies are saying. But for the Camp Half-Blood campers, those are the people he wants to be accepted by. So when they start poking fun at him, then he gets a little more defensive and tries to distance himself from Tyson. So it's not a perfect approach, and hopefully Percy will learn the errors of his way. And it's a nice lesson for Rick to put into a kid's book, because now parents can be like, you see how Percy's being kind of a poop face? Don't do this. Be nice to people and be nice even if it means someone picks on you. They're the loser, not you. So Percy's bothered by comments from the campers, and he's basically been reduced from cool guy who saved the world into that dude who has a weird brother.
Poor schmuck with the ugly monster for a brother.
Exactly. And
schmuck.
And I alluded to this in the last episode, but basically what we have here with Percy is he's got the Harry Potter situation going on where saves the world and then something embarrassing happens and you're right back to not being cool anymore and you got to fight your way back up and everyone has forgotten.
There's a TikTok sound trending right now where a character from the Hunger Games films, I can't remember her name, when she's like, the deal was if I win the Hunger Games, I can live the rest of my life in peace. And you're throwing me back.
Is this not Joanna Mason?
It is Joanna Mason. And so many people hopped on that sound immediately and were like, this is Percy Jackson in every single book. He's like, I just saved the world. You're putting me back. The deal was I saved the world. End of TikTok rant.
Thank you. As a former Viner, there's only so much I can talk about TikTok.
That's the age gap right there.
That's
the age gap.
I've still got the Vine pop socket on my phone. I've never let it go.
Slay.
They sent this to me when Vine got murdered. They sent me a care package of stuff. To this day, I've never downloaded the app. I will never download TikTok. I can't do it.
That's impressive.
Principles.
I'm impressed.
Look, I gotta draw a line somewhere, and that was the line. But also, it was a conscious choice of, I don't have enough free time to get sucked into TikTok.
Yeah.
So I just need to...
No, you're smart. You're smart.
When Vine got murdered, there was a week where I was the most productive human I've ever been. And I was very confused. Like, where did all this time come from? How did I finish this Potterless episode so early? It was, I didn't spend an hour a day just scrolling on Vine. That'll do it. So yes, made the conscious choice. No TikTok for me, please. So when Tyson isn't around, Percy tries to downplay their relationship, citing that Tyson is just a half-brother, not his real brother. And again, this sucks, but it's very 13-year-old of Percy, so I get it. And it tracks. And also, Percy, and he kind of admits here, he's just mad at Poseidon, and he feels like the coolness, the respect of being a son of Poseidon has kind of been watered down and reduced to a joke. So he's upset.
And he's never had that coolness before in his entire life.
Right.
His whole life, he's been the weirdo outskirts, never had lasting relationships, and all of a sudden he was like, for the first time in his life, felt like he belonged and he was cool, and now he's realizing that's just not maybe all it's cracked up to be.
It seems that he's also, his anger is not just general frustration at Poseidon, but specifically Percy is upset that this seems to be Poseidon's way of communicating with him, and that he doesn't give him any supplemental guidance, support, instruction, explanation. He just sort of drops this as a surprise to Percy. And that seems to be, among other things, obviously there is this nasty reputational cost thing going on, but I think part of the anger at Poseidon is actually genuine and well-placed because of this lack of communication. Like, if you were to have this issue with an actual half-sibling, you would assume that, a parent would intervene and have a good follow-up with you about how this happened, what this means.
Right. Especially because earlier when he's doing the burnt offering of food, he thinks, please send me some help. And then I guess this is Poseidon answering his request, but in the least communication way possible. And that feels on brand for the gods, but is also incredibly, understandably on Percy's part, upsetting.
Yeah. There's a very, I would say, famous and delightful, violent quote from Poseidon that comes at the end of this book, finally, when there's maybe a little bit of communication. And so I just think it's cute that we are definitely picking up on that thread of like his relationship with Poseidon, his frustration at not having a closer relationship with his dad now that he's been claimed is really building up, and it's just going to get worse throughout the rest of the series.
Spicy. So Annabeth tries to cheer Percy up by saying that they should team up for the chariot races. And narrator Percy clarifies that they hate Tantalus and they would love to do something about it, but we don't know what we can do about it. So let's just be kids and be at the camp. And sure, we're going to do the chariot race. I like narrator Percy trying to get ahead of any sort of backlash and be like, okay, before you think that I'm being irresponsible, I also agree that Tantalus sucks. I don't know what to do, man. I'm 13. No one tells me anything. I ask a million questions and I get zero answers. I'm Percy Jackson.
6 schools in 6 years from the musical.
Narrator Percy then goes on to say, quote, after all, Annabeth's mom, Athena, had invented the chariot and my dad had created horses. Together, we would own that track. And I just, it's so cute. I love it.
It is cute. Wait, so can you tell us what you feel about them and what you wish in your ideal world would maybe happen at the end of the series? Like, what's your dream?
I like them a lot. And where it's at right now, I do not care if they become together as a relationship or if they're just friends, boy, girl, don't have to be in a couple, much like in Rogue One.
Oh, such a good movie.
The two main leads didn't have any. I love that. Like, they didn't kiss at the end. Thank God. So I honestly would be equally happy with either result. I feel like my slight bias would be towards them getting together just because I like that their love language is making fun of each other, which is my particular love language. I love a good little, sneak diss, poke fun of me, talk trash kind of thing. I like that a lot. So I think they've got that. So it would work really well. But I'm also not trying to act like it has to happen because I think too often in media we have, it's a boy and a girl. They have to be in love by the end of the movie. That's the rules. And I would be okay if it doesn't happen. But also, I would love it if it did happen.
The important thing is that you like the dynamic because some people will read this book and be like, Annabeth is so mean to him.
No.
And that's the wrong take.
You're allowed to be mean if it means I secretly like you or not so secretly. Like, maybe this is just my New Jersey, but for me, my friends that I grew up with, like, the way we would be close is like poking fun at each other.
Oh, absolutely.
Oh, don't even.
Absolutely.
My friends are the meanest people I know. Let's
Right. And like, that's the true sign of friendship is I like you so much that I will allow you to call me out on all of the things that I'm insecure about and also keep me in check when I'm being kind of a jerk or whatever. And if anyone else tries to do it, no, you're not my friend. You're not allowed to do that. So no, she's not being mean. This is what people who are close to each other do.
It's the you can be mean if you're smart thing.
Right.
And you know that meme that's like, son, if you don't have anything scathing to say, don't say anything at all. Athena to Annabeth every single day. She wakes up in the morning. It's like written on the wall of the Athena cabin. Live, laugh, love. If you don't have anything scathing to say, don't say anything at all.
I think the key thing to keep in mind is there is a difference between being mean and rude. Because you can be mean in a cute way, but if you're just rude, that's a whole nother story.
That's Percy. Percy's just rude. That's what he loves. That's what he lives for.
He could be a little rude, but I feel like he's always rude at the right people, so it's okay. Then it's just sassy. I feel like I can make a big flowchart about everything, and I feel like being rude to someone that's being mean actually puts you in the new category where you're being sassy and it's justified.
Right, sassy. Yeah, that makes sense. I love that.
It's like righteous anger. Yeah. So one day, Annabeth and Percy are coming up with chariot designs, and some Aphrodite kids tease Percy about Tyson. Percy and Annabeth then get into this interesting argument where basically they keep saying two things, but one thing is nice and then one thing is crappy about Tyson, and then the other person calls out the crappy thing and then tries to say, no, you shouldn't say that, you should say this instead. And then that person says something crappy, and then the other person goes, you shouldn't say that, you should say this instead. And then they say something crappy. And it's this weird like train where they have a very interesting argument where they're both being nice and rude to Tyson at the same time. And I wasn't happy with either of them by the end of it.
I think that's a very generous to Annabeth way of reading that conversation.
Yeah.
Like, she's definitely, of the two of them, in case you were confused, the one who is more on the fence about Tyson. Right. She cannot full-throatedly defend him. She obviously doesn't know him as well, but also it seems clearly that there's something else lurking. Percy picks up on this, that she maybe has other reasons and other emotions going around Tyson that Percy cannot comprehend just based on watching them interact for the past, a few days. I think it's more Percy who's really genuinely on the fence about this and is having trouble understanding what to say to Annabeth, someone with whom he doesn't really have the same reputational cost issues going around. This is where you can really see his internal struggle between an actual genuine still appreciation of Tyson as a person, as a friend who he respects and also like wants to look out for like a younger sibling, but also, I don't know, it seems like he's also trying to reconcile that in real time in this conversation with the shame that he feels.
Yeah. This is Annabeth's flop era, to be clear. Like, we can state it right now. It pretty much never gets worse for her than this. This is really bad, and she will deal with everything that we feel is under the surface. It'll come to light. We'll work through it. But it does take time.
Yeah, I think this conversation is kind of what opens Percy's mind into try to make a more concerted effort towards being nicer towards Tyson, which happens later in the chapter. What I did think was interesting is that Percy, he like kind of tries to take the higher ground, but also 2 pages ago, you were being a jerk to Tyson. But I agree that like in this conversation in particular, Annabeth does come off looking worse. And Percy does get the sense that Annabeth has some sort of reason to not like the Cyclops. But of course, because of plot, we're not going to learn now until very later towards the end of the book. That's how these books and specifically how Annabeth works. So we'll figure it out later. I'm sure there's some Athena versus Cyclops.
You gotta dig past those walls.
Yeah. I'm sure there's some Athena versus Cyclops myth that I am not aware of that could be the explanation here.
That's a good prediction.
That's usually what happens when Annabeth is weird about something and doesn't say anything. So it's just the guess, but we shall see. But I'm glad to learn that this should be the low point for Annabeth, because I would hope that there's no other worse sort of thing. But unfortunately, this fight gets worse. Percy says that Annabeth is treating Tyson like he's some sort of horrible thing. Percy kind of was a little earlier, though. But then Annabeth says, then maybe you should design a chariot with him, in italics. And then Percy says, well, maybe I should. And then they both go, fine, fine. And then Annabeth storms off, which made me really sad. I definitely pulled out the Bo Burnham turning 30. No, when they got into the fight with each other.
This just gives me heart eyes. All I feel is love at the end of the scene. Maybe that's my problem, but I just saw this and I was like, oh, look at the little, oh.
If they didn't have feelings, they wouldn't yell.
Yeah, people tend to pave over this as a moment in their relationship and as a moment in a lot of dynamics where you are really close to someone. Like, you do not become close with someone without actually having to work through the various conflicts you have with them at some point in time. And what better time to do that than as a 13-year-old contemplating your chariot race with maybe your half-brother, or maybe, I don't know how we should describe Annabeth at this point. Anyway.
Your bestie.
It feels right. It feels right. It feels good. It feels bad, but it also feels good. You know? Yeah.
Right. If they didn't care about each other, they wouldn't care enough to get upset at each other. If they were indifferent towards each other, this would not be a conversation. You would just leave. So I think it shows that they do care about each other. I agree.
Yeah.
And also, this is a good time for us to take a little natural break as we get ready for our mid-roll break, which is called the Sea of Sponsors.
That's super funny.
Shout out to Timo who came up with it. Not me. Ahoy, mateys, and welcome aboard the Sea of Sponsors. Just a programming note that next week, Monday, March 28th, there will not be a new episode of TNO. Just taking the week off. I always take off the Mondays where there are 5 Mondays in a month. But if you look at the calendar, the first time that happened in 2022 was January, and then the next time it happened was May. And that is a long time to not have a break of any sorts. So I also am taking this Monday in March off just so that I had a nice little halfway point. I also have a very busy month ahead of me in late March/early April, so it's also just going to work out nice. But I'm not leaving you with nothing, because if you go over to the Potterless feed, a podcast that I used to post weekly and now I post sporadically, one of those sporadic episodes is coming out. It's going to be some live show audio from a past Potterless live show that we did in Grand Rapids, Michigan with my bud Johnny Frolickstein. It's very good. It's very fun. That'll come out on Monday. And speaking of those Potterless live shows, if you do want to see me perform live and you want to hear nerdy book stuff, but maybe about Harry Potter and not TNO, but TNO live shows will happen at some point. Don't worry. There are tickets up right now at potterlesspodcast.com/live for a couple cities in the United States. So we're coming to Washington, D.C., Seattle, Phoenix, Indianapolis, Chicago, Milwaukee, and Minneapolis/St. Paul. So if you go to potterlesspodcast.com/live, you can check out tickets. You can buy tickets. Those are dates through June. We'll have some shows later on in the year as well. Those just haven't been announced yet. But yeah, if you want to see me do some live podcasting stuff, check it out. And I'm excited to do TNO shows in the future, hopefully in 2023. Also, I'd like to thank all the folks supporting the show at thenewestolympian.com/Patreon. We have a whole bunch of people supporting. We're at 920-something patrons right now, which is really, really cool. Getting close to that 1,000 patron goal where I will do a stream of me and Stephen Parra playing Hades the video game. But I want to thank the folks who have joined most recently. So shout out to our newest Ultra God tier patron, Mrs. O'Leary. Shout out to our newest Super God tier patron, Alyssa J95. Shout out to our newest God tier patrons, Nurse Liv, Stephanie Barantes, Chris, and Yesenia Agosto. And shout out to our newest Demigod tier patrons, Rachel, Nico's Black Vespa, Danielle Coopersmith, MSAP Wiz, and Gunnar Brooks. Thank you all for your support. I wish you nothing but the best. May Poseidon help you perfectly decide what temperature to make your shower when you're showering so it's not too hot and it's not too cold. Speaking of support, I want to thank Multitude for having us as a part of the collective. If you're all caught up on TNO, you want something new to listen to, maybe something to listen to during the gap we're taking next week, you could listen to a bunch of wonderful shows from Multitude. One of those shows is a show that I co-host called Horse. Horse is a podcast about ridiculous stories and ridiculous people from the world of basketball, whether it's the current NBA and WNBA or basketball of old. Me and my co-host Adam Mamawala talk about the wildest stories in relation to basketball every other week. And even if you don't like the sport, it is a fun podcast to listen to just from a fun history perspective. If you want to get into the sport, it is a great way for you to learn a little bit about at least the major storylines and why people are tweeting mean things at Russell Westbrook. Things like that can help you hold your own in a conversation at a party or a bar, especially if a basketball game is on. We're approaching our 100th episode, which is really cool. So if you want to listen to a back catalog of wonderfully silly podcasts, you can search for Horse wherever you get your podcasts or by going to horsehoops.com. And before we wrap up here, you'll hear words from a few sponsors who make it feasible for me to be a full-time podcaster. Some of these ads will be read by me, others of them won't. The ones that are not read by me are inserted locally. So if you live in Denmark, don't be surprised if you hear a Danish ad or a Danish ad about Danishes. But once those ads are complete, we will get back to this episode of The Newest Olympian. All right, we are back, and where we last left, our two best friends were yelling at each other, and we're very sad. So let's keep reading, and hopefully they'll be less mad at each other. So a few days pass. Percy gets a flying lesson on a Pegasus from Selina Beauregard of
Queen.
the Aphrodite Cabin, which that's the most Aphrodite kid name possible. Well chosen, Rick Riordan. Well done.
Yeah, we've talked about that a bit on our show, where Beauregard comes from, maybe what that says about her family, what it says about Aphrodite and the places she likes to hang out in the continental United States. Surmise what you will. But Selina's amazing, and I love her with my whole heart and soul.
I'm excited to potentially learn more about her, because so far this is all we get. But because she got name dropped, I was thinking she'll probably come back at some point. Usually don't get a name unless you're important. Same thing with Beckendorf. I feel like this dude is in for some more stuff, and I like him. So we'll see. Narrator Percy says, quote, she explained that there was only one immortal winged horse named Pegasus who still wandered free somewhere in the skies, but over the eons, he'd sired a lot of children, none quite so fast or heroic, but all named after the first and the greatest. So I guess this is like how George Foreman named all of his kids George Foreman. So you just get named Pegasus, even though you're not Pegasus with a capital P. It's just the difference between the uppercase and the lowercase, but that's Pegasus, baby. Now, riding Pegasi makes Percy feel okay about flying, which is something he's normally not too comfortable with, and he credits the horse nature of Pegasi for this, because Poseidon and horses, and he can also kind of read the thoughts of the Pegasi, which is super cool. He can basically tell where they're going to go, and that makes flying a little easier. He wouldn't be surprised if they go up or down or dip or whatever. Now, Tyson also wanted to ride the, quote, chicken ponies. Mwah. Chef's kiss. Perfect. No notes. But the Pegasi are afraid of him, even after Percy tells them telepathically that it's okay and that you can trust him. And this makes Tyson cry. And again, no, Tyson. I don't want anything to make him cry ever. He's just so sweet. Now, the only person who is nice to Tyson is Beckendorf. Knew I liked this dude. Had a cool name. Right off the bat, seemed like a good dude. Proves to be a good dude.
Yeah.
Because Beckendorf has experience working with Cyclops in the Forges. So he decides to teach Tyson how to craft magic items. And that is very cool. And I would love to see an arc where Tyson crafts some stuff for future quests. could be really fun.
Slay Beckendorf out here giving Tyson like employable skills, like teaching him ways to make money, to earn a wage, like
connecting him to his culture.
Yeah.
Literally, because Cyclops culture.
Right.
Beckendorf is a true king. I love this man.
I'm a big fan. I hope we get some more Beckendorf content. Percy then does various camp stuff, and at one point he is atop the Half-Blood Hill, and he sees all of the plants looking weak, and he gets angry at Luke, which is justified. I hate Luke. All my homies hate Luke. Not a fan. At night, Percy has more Grover dreams, and sometimes it's just tiny little snippets, including, quote, "It's here," and "He likes sheep." So, very fun stuff. And Percy is too embarrassed to tell Annabeth about them because he thinks lines such as "he likes sheep" seem quite absurd, and he doesn't want to talk to her about them, especially given their rocky relationship at the moment. Narrator Percy says, "The night before the race, Tyson and I finished our chariot. It was wicked cool. And I'm glad, Carter, you're here as Boston representative because I have to pull my Uncle Rick, this is not correct for a New York card. If you wanted to be a true New Yorker, Percy would have said it was mad cool. He would not have said it was wicked cool. Maybe it's just because I hate all Boston sports teams as a Yankee/Knicks fan, but this was nails on a chalkboard made out of styrofoam for me to hear my beloved Percy say that something was wicked cool. I was crushed.
If it makes you feel better, I have not, in my now 4.5 years in this metropolitan area, ever heard someone use the phrase wicked cool unironically.
Okay.
But even ironically, I've only heard it from people like over the age of 50. I'm sure they're around. I just don't. Anyway.
Boston is improving and growing.
Percy is technically a millennial.
Right, yeah.
Important for us to remember.
And Uncle Rick is old, so. But yeah, wicked. But I'm glad the chariot looks cool. Tyson made the metal plates in the forges, and Percy sanded the wood, and he did the carriage. It is blue and white with waves on the side and a trident on the front. Love that they took the time to paint cool designs onto it, because if you're 13, obviously you have to do this. And Percy has Tyson ride shotgun, being the weapons man, even though he knows that the horses won't like it and that Tyson's size will slow them down. I like to see Percy's growth here. He's improving. He's making good on his word, and he's being nicer to Tyson. Love to see it.
This just reminded me, pulled up a sense memory as you were describing the chariot as it's described in the text of cardboard boat races. Did you ever do this?
No.
The way that Carter and I did these in school, this is the only thing I can compare to a chariot race where you build something and then you have to see how it functions and race against the other kids. We were in 8th grade.
And also the thing that you build is kind of falling apart as you go. Yeah, it's a very emotionally similar experience.
We were given cardboard boxes. We weren't allowed to use duct tape, and we had to figure out a way to sail the cardboard box from one end of the pool to the other. And it was treacherous. There was sabotage involved. So it was quite similar, I would say, to the chariot races.
Okay, interesting. I'm glad you've had that experience. I've never done any of these things. I never did boxcar derby or any of that stuff. I was never into Boy Scouts. So I've never done a lot of crafting or racing of any sorts. I guess the closest would be I've done go-kart races, but I didn't make my own go-kart. So.
Right. That would be complicated.
Truly. Tyson notices that Percy is mad one night when they're going to bed, and Percy says that he isn't, but he totally is. Tyson says, "I'm a monster," and Percy says, "Don't say that," and Tyson says, "It is okay. I will be a good monster. Then you will not have to be mad." Tyson! You can't keep doing this to me.
Hitting it right on the head right here, right now. All of the questions that I always have when I reread Sea of Monsters that kind of continue throughout the books. We never get a quite clear answer or chart on what is a good monster, what is a bad monster, how are we supposed to think, what is a monster in general, who qualifies as a monster versus a beast, who explodes into ashes, who goes to Tartarus, how are we supposed to categorize these people and how are we supposed to treat people? Are we supposed to treat them differently based on whether or not they count as a monster? And Tyson comes right out here and says, "No, it's true, I am a monster, but you can be a good monster," which is a great way for us to be able to think about this sort of murky water about who is and isn't good and evil, monstrous throughout all the rest of the books.
Yeah, it's really nice. I think it's an interesting perspective, and I like that Tyson is comfortable in who he is. He's not afraid. He's not ashamed. And he wants to be a good monster. He wants to fight against the notion that monsters are bad. And I love this. He's so good.
Yeah.
Gosh.
It's this really striking and heartbreaking juxtaposition between this aspiration that he has for himself, this confidence he has in himself about who he can be, what he can do, combined with also this keen awareness that we are a little surprised by because of the ways in which Tyson is kind of childlike and has had difficulty reading people's emotions in the past.
Yeah.
The fact that he can pick up on Percy being upset and the other people around them having misgivings about him and fear around him is really tough to see, and such a reminder that, you know, as much as Percy, it seems like, is really trying to be a good brother to Tyson and not let his anger and confusion show around him, it's still coming through, and it's still definitely causing harm here.
Yeah, because he's very emotionally intelligent.
Yeah.
Just because he may not have the same like breadth of knowledge about facts and societal norms that other people have, he is very smart and very attuned to everything going on around him.
Yeah. It's nice to see. I also just think it's incredibly impressive that Rick has this ability to have characters introduced for just a couple of pages, and then I fall in love with them. I was in love with Sally Jackson after 2 pages, and now same with Tyson. It's been a couple chapters, and I want to protect him with every fiber of my being. Man, like, it does not take very long. We're on chapter 6. Like, come on. We met Tyson 5 minutes ago. It's very good stuff from Rick. So Percy goes on to say, it's just, I never had a half-brother before, and he tries to keep his voice from cracking. It's really different for me, and I'm worried about the camp, and another friend of mine, Grover, he might be in trouble. I keep feeling like I should be doing something to help, but I don't know what. I'm sorry, it's not your fault. I'm mad at Poseidon. I feel like he's trying to embarrass me, like he's trying to compare us or something, and I don't understand why. And I appreciate Percy being very mature in understanding what's going into his emotions and being mature enough to share those with Tyson and being honest about it. This is good. I like the direction Percy is going after a brief stint of me not being so happy with how he feels and how he's been acting. This is incredibly mature.
Speaking of Sally Jackson, this is all her.
Yeah.
You know that she taught him about emotional maturity and how to know where he's redirecting his anger from and find the source of that. Certainly wasn't Poseidon teaching Percy how to have emotional intelligence. So
yes. Star Parent of the Year, Sally Jackson. So Percy then hears Tyson snoring. So we don't know how much Tyson heard of this, but Percy then says, "Good night, big guy," and goes to sleep as well. And dream time.
Woo!
So Grover is wearing a wedding dress, as we all anticipated.
Iconic.
It does not fit him well, and he's
Tragic.
covered in mud. And this line, I think, is very funny, that unintentionally written in 2006, in 2022, it's a funny line because this says, quote, "He was standing in a dank cave lit only by torches." To have dank and lit in the same sentence, amazing. Ahead of his time, Rick Riordan.
I guess.
It's just funny that these words in 2006 probably just meant their only one use, whereas now they've become cool lingo, or at least lingo that people who are 30 think that people use. And I know people don't use any of these words anymore. Whatever the new lit is, I don't even know what it is.
Dang.
But it's okay. I'm
Let's
old
bring
now.
it back.
People our age would probably disagree with this, but I would argue that both of these terms functionally predate us.
I feel like I was saying dank quite a bit circa 2014. Still.
Okay. I mean, I'm always surprised at how old words are used colloquially. I was just watching an episode of Seinfeld last night, and this must have come out in the early 90s. And Kramer said that someone broke up with him because he was a hipster. And I was flummoxed that that was a phrase used
You were
in
like,
the 90s.
where are his Birkenstocks?
I mean, he certainly is. Like, if you watch that show, like, based on what he does, how he acts, like, he put up wood wallpaper in his apartment. Yes, Kramer's certainly a hipster. But people were saying that in 1992? No way. Maybe it had a different meaning. I have no idea. But maybe people have been saying dank and lit for
Yeah,
ages.
it was passed down from Greek society, ancient Greece.
We'll have to read the hieroglyphs of myspace.com to know if people were using them. So Grover is working on an old school loom with some sort of white fabric in there. And Grover then thanks the gods and asks if Percy can hear him. So this is a very different type of dream we've got going on. Dream Percy is slow to respond because anytime you're in a dream, you can't do what you actually have to do. And eventually he does confirm that he can hear. Now, a voice from behind a giant boulder where Grover is says, "Honeybee, are you done yet?" And, whoa, goodness, we're in quite the pickle here. Grover responds in falsetto that it'll take a few more days. The monster asks, hasn't it been 2 weeks already? Grover says, it's only been 5 days, which leaves 12 more to go. Amazing work from Grover here. And the monster pauses and then says, fine, but I want to see under the veil. And very interesting here. Grover then turns back to Percy, saying that he needs help as he's stuck in this cave on an island in the sea. And immediately I thought, well, clearly this sea must be the Sea of Monsters, and we will soon learn it is.
Context clues!
The titular Sea of Monsters.
Reading comprehension. I'm 30. So when Percy asks where, Grover says, I don't know. I went to Florida and I turned left. I'm glad that the Sea of Monsters is right off the coast of Florida because, of course.
Yeah.
Of course. Yeah. Grover goes on to say that it's a trap, which is why no satyr has ever returned from this quest. This monster is a shepherd. And then he says he has it. And I wrote in my notes, it? We'll soon get back to the it. But he then says that he's got nature magic so powerful that it smells like Pan. But it's a trap to get eaten by Polyphemus? Polyphemus. Thank you. Polyphemus. And I couldn't tell you anything about Polyphemus. So I will learn more from Dr. Moya in a future episode, or I guess later in the book. But my guess was, I bet this is the Cyclops from the cover. And the very next sentence is a reveal that he's a Cyclops. So I'm guessing it's the Cyclops from the cover. Grover then says that he almost got away. He got all the way to St. Augustine. So that makes me realize that the shop from before was on brand like the other shops we had, where if it's got a quirky name, there's some sort of Greek figure that runs the shop. So Grover saying, I almost got to St. Augustine when it was St. Augustine's Bridal, whatever the heck. That makes more sense. Grover then says that his first empathy link must have worked when he was trapped in the store. And that is now explaining how these dreams work and how they're in real time. So the bridal dress is apparently the only thing keeping Grover alive. And Grover lied to the Cyclops, saying that he smelled good to the monster because of goat-scented perfume. And the monster couldn't see well from the last time someone tried to poke his eye out. So now Grover only has 2 weeks to finish the bridal train. And, oh my goodness, what a circumstance.
This dream is iconic. Iconic. Yeah. The imagery of Grover in the wedding dress stays with me. It's how I picture Grover all the time. It's how we know Grover is like a queer icon in many, many ways. The speaking in the falsetto, it's giving very much Pleakly from Lilo and Stitch.
Oh, great reference.
Do you want us to say anything about Polyphemus?
Would you like to talk about the myth, or do you like to save that?
If you know Polyphemus, sure. Unless it's going to spoil something I'm going to learn later in the book. But if you want to just big picture Polyphemus, sure.
I think that Rick does more coverage of the myth, but like Grover makes specific references that you might pick up on if you have heard of Polyphemus, who is arguably like the most famous Cyclops.
Okay, yeah.
Polyphemus originally, you would know from Greek mythology in the Odyssey. He's one of the stops that Odysseus makes on the way back.
Okay, gotcha.
And so the thing that Grover's talking about, how he can't see that well from the last time his eye got poked out.
That's a reference to Odysseus.
That's what it's a reference to.
Poking out his eye in the famous myth where he pretends to be nobody and basically gaslights Polyphemus until he blinds him, which is very scary and stressful.
Got it. I did read part of the Odyssey in high school at some point, but I probably spark noted it.
Neither of us have ever read the actual Odyssey. We just read summaries.
Hey, that's fine.
I read the Delaire's Book of Greek Myths, which in many ways is substantially better.
Yeah, Homer can have a chat with Delaire's, who actually invented mythology.
I support a genderqueer Grover reading now at the time when I first read it. And honestly, the first time I reread it, I was like, wow, this is maybe highly transphobic. But
we twist that.
Okay.
We take it and we morph it.
We're reclaiming it. Grover's like wedding sewing. I don't know if this is something that jumped out to, spoke to other people who are reading this book for the first time, but it is also a separate reference to a different part of the Odyssey. I don't think they ever talk about it in this book, but it's delightful. And we'll be back to it's what Odysseus' wife does, where she delays her wedding by she sews and then unsews her wedding dress every day and says that when it's done, she'll finally marry one of the suitors who is trying to take over for Odysseus. I don't think Rick ever talks about that in this book, but That is clearly what he's referencing.
Oh, right. That is a
Penelope.
thing.
Easter eggs. Penelope,
Yeah.
yes.
You're right. Good call. Wow. Thank you. Good. This is why I have smart people on the show.
He's weaving a lot together in this book, which is there's going to be more that comes up and more myths about oceans and traveling oceans and all kinds of things meshed together, which is really fun.
I'm excited. That's so good. So Percy asks just to check, and Grover does confirm that the Cyclops thinks Grover is a lady Cyclops. And Percy says, I will come rescue you. Where are you? And Grover says, The Sea of Monsters, of course. You know, the title of this book. Come on, Percy. Look up. It's at the top of the page.
Percy does not have reading comprehension.
So Grover then raises the stakes by saying that the empathy link has connected their emotions. And Percy goes, oh no, don't tell me if you die, I die. Grover's like, no, you'll just be in a vegetative state for a couple of years. So stakes quite high at this point. The monster then says that it's dinner time, and dinner is sheep meat, which I'm assuming Grover will not be eating. But Percy then, before Grover can leave, asks, wait, you said it was here. What's that? And I was very glad that Percy asked this because I was also wondering, what is the it? But in classic PJO fashion, Grover does not answer it. His voice fades away and he goes, sweet dreams, don't let me die.
Iconic.
So iconic. I forgot that this was how the empathy link first is formed, but it's a really important bond between the two of them. So
Okay, I'm excited. I'm very much excited. Now, once this dream finished, I wrote in my notes, this has to be tree related, right? The it is either the cure or the source of the poison or something. This has to do something with the tree, right? And a couple sentences later, you'll see what's up. So it's race morning. Quote, millions of birds were roosting in the trees, fat gray and white pigeons, except they didn't coo like regular pigeons. They made this annoying metallic screeching sound that reminded me of a submarine radar. And I thought that was very suspicious, especially given the chapter title. So I was thinking, all right, either we've got some Hephaestus cabin shenanigans going on, or they're referencing Welcome to Night Vale, which is that birds are actually government spy things and birds aren't real. They're just changing the batteries. They don't go to sleep, et cetera, et cetera.
is that what Birds Aren't Real comes
from?
from?
A book or something?
Yeah, that's from Welcome to Night Vale, right? The podcast by Jeffrey Kramer.
An internet
Spontaneous
thing.
generation from the internet. Yeah, what?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it started with that. And I know this came up recently because some internet entity of some sorts was selling Bird Watching Goes Both Ways merch.
Oh
and
my
that's
God.
a 2014 tweet from Welcome to Night Vale.
Wow. This is internet lore for
Yeah.
the ages. I had no idea.
Reading up history.
Shout out to Jeffrey Kramer, one of the creators of Night Vale, who I know personally. I'll have to message him, but like, I'm pretty sure, at least the way he tweeted about it is like, sure, other people have probably made that joke before, but specifically the phrasing bird watching goes both ways is a Welcome to Night Vale thing. That explicitly. I don't know the exact origins of the birds aren't real, but I at least know that they're a very early one.
Sure. The notion that birds aren't real is certainly ancient and well-founded.
Now, we also learned that the track that they're racing on was plowed by the Hephaestus cabin using the bronze bulls that apparently are now tame, which that's a pretty huge ad for Camp Half-Blood, just to have giant mechanical bulls at your disposal now. That's impressive.
Hephaestus cabin gets work done. They are always working.
Truly. So Tantalus then lays down the rules. Quote, a quarter-mile track, twice around to win. 2 horses per chariot. Each team will consist of a driver and a fighter. Weapons are allowed. Dirty tricks are expected, but try not to kill anybody. And the narrator Percy says that Tantalus smiled at us like we were all naughty children. Hate that. Didn't need that. Unnecessary detail.
He's scary.
Yeah. Tantalus continues, any killing will result in harsh punishment. No s'mores at the campfire for a week. Camp Half-Blood really has to work on their punishments because they are not severe at all.
I laughed. I'm sorry. I enjoyed it. That's good humor.
I mean, yeah, it's certainly a good joke, but just in terms of being a well-run institution, Camp Half-Blood, sort your priorities, please.
It's funny coming out of the mouth of Tantalus, who killed and served his own children to the gods.
And also cannot eat.
Oh, that's what he did. Okay.
Don't they mention it a little bit at the beginning of the book?
He says it later. No, it's coming.
Oh,
It's fine. I figured I was going to learn it. We already had had me guessing what it is in the last episode. So don't worry. That's all we need.
That's not a spoiler. That's just mythology.
Right. Mythology spoiler, that's okay. That's welcome here. Story spoilers, no. But no, I already guessed that. I figured, based on what I know about Greek gods, he either killed someone he wasn't supposed to kill or slept with someone he wasn't supposed to sleep with. So I was wrong. But yeah, that's a pretty big offense.
No, he did kill someone he wasn't supposed to kill.
His kids? Yeah. I mean, I figured it would have been someone not related to.
Was it supposed to?
3,000 years of not being able to eat food or drink stuff feels like that's a bad crime. Don't kill your kids. Bad thing to do.
Yeah, Zeus was mad.
So Beckendorf leads out the Hephaestus chariot, which is so decked out in gear that Percy compares it to a Maserati, which I thought was a fantastic reference and totally tracks because every 13-year-old boy loves cars. That's just what you do when you're a 13-year-old boy. The Ares chariot is pulled by horse skeletons, which is just completely glossed over. They don't mention how that works. And I'm a big fan of this. When I read Harry Potter, I loved the Thestrals. I called them Bony Ponies. And now these are even more Bony Ponies. Come on. Skeleton horses? And you're just going to write one sentence about that and not say anything else? What the heck?
We'll get more information about how the powers of the Ares kids work, and I think that this plays into that. So we'll find out shortly.
All right, good.
This book.
Interesting. I'm excited. The Apollo chariot is very sleek and gold, and it is pulled by Palomino horses, which is the sleekest type of horse, so that tracks. And the fighter just has a big bow and arrows. The Hermes chariot is green and old-looking, like it had been in a garage for years. But the stoles are the drivers, so Percy is on his toes for any sort of tricks.
Oh, yeah.
Annabeth has a chariot, and then there is Percy/Tyson. Now, before the race, Percy relays the dream that he had to Annabeth, and she initially gets very excited to hear about Grover. I love that they can do the classic friend thing of immediately dropping beef if something more important comes up.
Yes.
It's so good. It's something you need in a friend. But unfortunately, this doesn't last because as Percy continues and the story gets more ridiculous, she thinks that Percy's just trying to distract her. But then Annabeth goes on to confirm my suspicions because what causes her to lose belief is the notion that Grover just happened to stumble upon the one thing that would save the camp. So I definitely think whatever it is, it's got something to do with what's going on with Thalia's tree. So very intrigued to learn more in a couple of chapters, I'm guessing.
Ooh, you're a Thalia person. Fascinating.
I've done the research and I listened to Rick Riordan say Thalia and he said Thalia.
It's okay because we found out this week that we've all been saying Rick's name wrong forever. So
is it Riordan?
It's Riordan.
No, wait. No, that's not true. I heard Rick say his own name and he said Riordan.
Apparently, we all just gaslit Rick for years into saying Riordan, but it's actually Riordan. And this was confirmed on Twitter.
No, by him?
Yeah, so because it came up in Jeopardy, he was a Jeopardy answer. It was Rick Riordan. And then everybody, including Becky, his wife, from at Camp Half-Blood on Twitter, tweeted like, oh my God, thank you for finally pronouncing Rick's name correctly.
Wait.
And I was like, nope. We are not opening this.
Holy crap. This is wild. Because in the very initial audio for the Newest Olympian, before doing stuff, I think I kept it in the episode where I Googled, how do you pronounce his last name?
Yeah.
And the Google auto thing said Riordan. And I said it, and then some people were like, no, that's not right.
It's like a Berenstain Bears at this point. It's not happening.
Wait, but then I listened to a YouTube video of Rick saying his own last name, and he said, hi, this is Rick Riordan.
We bullied him. It's okay. It just goes to show that if you want something bad enough, you can make the change in the world.
Well, now I have a growing list of very silly questions to ask Rick if I ever get him on the pod. And now number
what's
one
your last
is,
name?
Okay, what's the deal, dude? I mean, maybe he's just doing the thing that I hate that people have this notion, but I know people who have names that are difficult to pronounce. They usually just say, oh, however you want to say it is fine, which is not true. Tell me how to really say it.
Right.
Like, I want to try to put in the effort to say it right, but yeah, maybe he just went with Riordan because it's easier, but I feel, oh my God, okay.
It's a Pandora's box problem.
I'm going to have to check out these new things because now I might have to convert to a Riordan. If that's how he says it, I want to be the most correct possible. Wow. All right. Well, anyway, jeepers creepers. Percy insists he's not lying. Annabeth is hesitant, and Percy suggests consulting the Oracle. But the race is starting. We gotta go. Annabeth says, we'll talk later. after I win. Love it. Love this. Good trash talk. Fantastic.
Such a sweet conversation.
This conversation is especially important. We alluded to our ongoing battles with various Annabeth haters on the internet. They should tune in to this moment specifically because it's very important that Annabeth here assumes that Percy has already made all of the connections that she has. This is a person who clearly, like, you can get the sense that obviously they're fighting, they don't agree about everything, all of that, but she fundamentally still respects Percy and mostly trusts him enough to tell her what is correct unless it comes to an athletic competition, in which case maybe lie to sabotage her, which I think is a sign of a relationship in which there is respect, in which there is a healthy mix of trust and also fun, deceit, however you would characterize the other option that she's thinking about here. Like, the most common critique of Annabeth is that she doesn't respect Percy and that she thinks he's worthless. And clearly that's just not true. Not everyone's reading the text. We'll just leave a flag here for that.
It's also important to notice how distrustful Annabeth is in general. Like, she is somebody who has a hard time trusting people. We saw that with the whole Tyson Cyclops situation. So the fact that she even trusts Percy this much for who she is, that means a lot for her.
Yeah, I mean, she's had a lot of things go wrong for her in terms of the trust department, whether it's with her family, her dad.
Her Luke.
Yeah, with Luke, with other stuff that's happened at Camp Half-Blood. She's got a lot of reason to not necessarily trust folks right away, so I don't blame her for it. I do think that this is actually a great place to end the episode here because we are a little over what the recording time would be, and we're about to get into a big old race, and that's fine. That just means we had a great discussion that we didn't get through the whole chapter, but thank you to so much for joining. We'll pick up next time with the beginning of the race, and then we'll see how much of Chapter 7 we can get through. Thank you again. This has been really fun. I'm glad we finally got to make this happen. If people want to find you two doing stuff on the internet, where can they find you?
Yes, so our podcast is called Seaweed Brain. We're available to be heard on all platforms. You can follow us on Instagram at Seaweed Brain Podcast, Twitter at Seaweed Brain Pod. I occasionally make TikToks at erica.seaweedbrain. By the time this airs, we'll be about halfway through The Blood of Olympus. So if you have been reading Heroes of Olympus and want to hear some folks talk about it, you can pop on over and have a chit chat with us.
Fantastic. Great. Yes. For anyone struggling with how slow I'm making my way through the series, there's other options out there. You don't have to wait 3 years. So Carter and Erica, thank you so much for joining. Listeners, thanks for listening. And until we get back into the mix and figure out what's going on with this race and why these pigeons are demonic, I'll see you later. Hey, thanks so much for listening to this episode of The Newest Olympian. This podcast is created, hosted, and produced by me, Mike Schubert. I also run the social media and the website. Our editor is Sherry Guo. The music is by Bettina Campamanes and Brandon Grugel, and the art is by Jessica E. Boyd. If you are all caught up on the show and you want some more, you can get some more by going to thenewestolympian.com/Patreon. You'll get access to loads of bonus episodes, bonus audio, all the old Potterless stuff, whole bunch of fun things at thenewestolympian.com/Patreon. And speaking of that Patreon, I want to give a huge shout out to our producer level patrons: Lotta Bartova, Kelsey Gillespie, The Damn Steam Nuggets, Emma Cooey, Vicky Garcia, Ellie Hoskovchova, Veronica Bartova, Haley Hastings, Robin Garcia, Frida Vikstrom, Megan Moon, Tough Bayfong, Moo Productions, Don't Call Me Nymphadora, Olivia Y, Craig McRoberts, Taylor Payne, Giselle Salvador, Minka Dreesen, Can't-I Seaweed Brain, Matt Barger, Peter Johnson the Twin, Sabrina Balsiger, Bony Pony, Getting Stoned with Smelly Gabe, Heather McMillan, Casey Canales, Polly Burridge, Nikki Harris, Tatiana Schmidt, Sandra Rose, Bridget Lowry, Josh Sayer, Percy Blue, Josh Wilkie, Abby Ryan, Shannon Yvanez Aguilar, Wise Girl, Alpacas Are Hope, Milo TZ, Roxas 1912, Rafaela, Ashton Gabrielson, Cara Marin, Colby, Marco Redhouse, Falcon, Joey James, Christopher William Boucher, Justin Lux, Caden Max, Sam Ruby, Carly Allen, Riley Kiedis, Mary Kelly, Audra, Mackenzie, and Mrs. O'Leary. If you want to follow the show on social media, we are at Newest Olympian on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook, and we're also at reddit.com/r/the Newest Olympian. If you want to help out the show in a non-monetary way, spreading it by word of mouth is awesome, and I really appreciate it. You can post about it on social media. You can leave a rating and review on whatever podcast app you're using. You can reach out to someone that you know that you think would like the show, whether it's an email, a text message, whatever, and just say, hey, there's this really cool podcast hosted by this really cool, humble guy, and I think you would enjoy it. If you do that, I would really appreciate it. But I'm just so thankful you tuned into this episode. We're off next week, but afterwards, I hope you tune into our next episode where we continue our discussion of Percy Jackson and the Sea of Monsters, this time covering the rest of Chapter 6 and the beginning of Chapter 7 with Stephen Parr. But until then, I'll see you later. Hey everyone, it's me, ASMR Mike. How's it going? So I actually had a very stressful day in the studio, but what I'm going to do as my way of releasing this stress is talking about it in a very calm manner because that's going to help. So I was recording a new episode of Meddling Adults, which is a podcast that I make seasonally, and we're working on season 4. And we just had a terrible recording in that had some issues where we started late because one of the guests had a last minute meeting that ran long. Then one of our guests, it was raining where they were recording and their roof started to leak. So we had a little bit of a delay. Then their roof caved in. So we had even more of a delay. Then the audio program that I used to record here in the studio had a server wide issue. So we had a delay there. And then the other guest had a last minute work meeting scheduled, so we had to cut it short. So what should have been a 1-hour recording ended up being a 2-hour recording, and we didn't even finish the whole episode. So now that I've said it in a calm manner, I feel more calm about it. Life can be tricky sometimes, as can be this job, but I hope your day was a little less stressful than mine was.